Some loves are written in secret long before they're spoken aloud, hidden in the pages of journals and the quiet corners of hearts too afraid to hope. Natalie Harper knew this truth intimately, because for 8 months she had been pouring her feelings into stories she never intended anyone to read, least of all the man who inspired every word. The Seattle. The sky had turned that particular shade of angry gray that promised trouble, the kind that made even longtime residents pause and take notice. Natalie stood at her apartment window, watching the wind whip the trees into a frenzy, her fingers unconsciously twisting the hem of her oversized sweater. At 29, she had weathered plenty of Pacific storms in her small ground-floor apartment. But the emergency alerts on her phone were more urgent than usual. Flooding warnings. Evacuation recommendations. Stay safe. She was about to start moving her valuables to higher ground when the knock came at her door. Her heart did that familiar skip it always did when she suspected who might be on the other side. "Natalie? You in there?" Owen Brennan's voice carried through the door. Rich and warm, even muffled by the wood between them, she opened the door to find her upstairs. Neighbor standing there in a gray Henley and jeans, his dark auburn hair slightly damp from the rain already starting to fall. He had those kinds of eyes that seemed to notice everything, hazel with flecks of green that shifted in different light. She'd described those eyes in at least 4 different stories saved on her laptop. "Hey," she managed, trying to sound casual, despite her pulse quickening. "What's up?" Owen's brow furrowed with concern. "Have you seen the weather alerts? They're saying the storm is going to be really bad and your apartment is ground level. I was thinking maybe you should ride it out upstairs with me. My place is safer from flooding, and honestly, I'd feel better knowing you weren't down here alone if things get worse." There it was. That casual kindness that had drawn her to him from the first week he'd moved into the building. Owen was the kind of person who remembered how you took your coffee, who helped elderly neighbors with their groceries without being asked, who rescued spiders instead of killing them. She'd fallen for him slowly, then all at once, in that devastating way that crept up on you until suddenly every small interaction felt monumental. "I don't want to impose," Natalie said automatically, even as her practical side screamed at her to accept. "You wouldn't be." His smile was genuine, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Come on, Natty. Grab whatever you need for the night. Books, laptop, chargers, whatever makes you comfortable. I've got plenty of food and we can wait this thing out together." The nickname made her chest tighten. He'd started calling her that a few months ago, and she'd written an entire chapter around a character being called that same name with that same affectionate tone. 20 minutes later, Natalie found herself climbing the stairs to Owen's apartment, backpack slung over one shoulder and her laptop bag clutched in her other hand. That laptop held her secrets, her fantasies, her carefully crafted world where she was brave enough to imagine what it might be like. If Owen felt the same way she did, Owen's apartment was a reflection of his work as a marine biologist. Decorated with nautical charts, framed photographs of ocean wildlife, and bookshelves crammed with both scientific texts and surprisingly well-worn novels. It smelled like coffee and something woodsy, clean and masculine in a way that made her want to curl up and stay forever. "Make yourself at home," Owen said, already moving to secure the windows with additional weather stripping. "Bathrooms down the hall if you need it. I've got blankets and pillows in the closet. We should probably fill some containers with water just in case the pipes have issues." They worked together preparing for the storm, and Natalie was hyper-aware of every accidental brush of their hands. Every time they squeezed past each other in the small kitchen. By the time the storm really hit, rain hammering against the windows like fists demanding entry, they'd settled on the couch with mugs of tea. "So," Owen said, stretching his long legs out in front of him, "what do you usually do during storms?" "Read. Work." Natalie felt her face warm. "I write, actually. Just personal stuff. Nothing professional." "Yeah. What kind of writing?" "Oh, stories, fiction." She desperately wanted to change the subject. "What about you?" But Owen's interest was piqued. "That's really cool. I've always admired people who can create entire worlds from their imagination. What kind of fiction do you write?" "Romance, mostly," she admitted quietly, staring into her tea. I like romance, Owen said, surprising her. There's something honest about it, you know? People wanting connection, taking risks for love. That takes courage. If only he knew how little courage she actually had. Here she was, sitting next to the man she'd been writing about for months, too afraid to tell him that every hero in her stories had his smile, his kindness, his hands. As the storm intensified, the power flickered once, twice, then died completely. Owen moved quickly, gathering candles and a flashlight, bathing the room in warm, dancing light. In the sudden quiet, without the hum of electricity, everything felt more intimate. Well, Owen said, settling back onto the couch closer to her this time, looks like we're in for a long night. Want to watch something on my laptop before the battery dies? Or we could just talk. Natalie reached for her own laptop, thinking she might show him some of her graphic design work to fill the awkward silence she felt creeping in. But her hands were shaky from the adrenaline of the storm, and when she opened the screen, she froze. There, illuminated in the candlelight, was the document she'd been working on that morning. The one titled, "When the Marine Biologist Stole My Heart." The one where the hero, a kind and observant man named after the ocean itself, looked exactly like Owen. The one where his name appeared in the very first paragraph. Owen had leaned in to look at the screen, curious about her work. She watched in horror as his eyes scanned the words. Watched the moment of recognition cross his face as he saw his own name, his own physical description. Scenarios that eerily mirrored moments they'd actually shared. "Natalie," he said slowly, his voice strange and tight, "is this about me?" The silence stretched between them like a living thing, broken only by the howling wind outside and the pounding of Natalie's heart so loud she was certain Owen could hear it. She wanted to close the laptop, to run, to disappear into the storm itself, rather than face this moment. But there was nowhere to go, no escape from the truth, now laid bare in the flickering candlelight. "I can explain," she started, her voice barely a whisper. But what explanation could possibly make this less mortifying? Owen's eyes were still on the screen, reading, and she could see his lips moving slightly as he took in the words she'd written, words about strong hands and gentle touches, about the way sunlight caught in auburn hair, about a fictional version of him falling in love with a fictional version of her. "How long?" he asked finally, and his voice held something she couldn't quite identify. Not anger, not disgust, but something else entirely. 8 months, Natalie admitted, closing her eyes because she couldn't bear to see his reaction. "Since right after you moved in? I know it's weird and invasive, and I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to see them. They were just for me, a way to process feelings that I couldn't express in real life." "Feelings," Owen repeated. And now he did look at her, those hazel eyes intense in the candlelight. "What kind of feelings, Natalie?" The storm outside chose that moment to send a crack of thunder so loud it rattled the windows, and Natalie jumped. Without thinking, Owen reached out and took her hand, his thumb automatically stroking her knuckles in a soothing gesture. It was exactly the kind of thing the character in her stories would do. It's a kind where every time I hear your footsteps upstairs, my whole day gets better, she found herself confessing, the words tumbling out now that the dam had broken. The kind where I time my grocery trips to maybe run into you in the hallway. The kind where I've memorized the exact shade of your eyes and the way you laugh at your own jokes, and how you're patient with Mrs. Patterson when she tells the same stories over and over. Ow. Owen's hand tightened around hers. "Keep going." The kind where I've been half in love with you for months, but too afraid to do anything about it. Because you're kind to everyone, and I couldn't tell if I was special or just another neighbor you were nice to. Her voice cracked. So I wrote stories instead. Stories where I was brave enough to tell you. Stories where you felt the same way. I'm sorry, Owen. I'll delete them all. We can pretend this never happened. What if I don't want to pretend it never happened? Owen said quietly. Natalie's eyes flew to his face, searching for signs that he was mocking her, but what she saw there made her breath catch. There was wonder in his expression, and something that looked almost like relief. What? She whispered. Owen shifted closer, still holding her hand, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. Natalie, for 8 months, I've been trying to figure out if you felt anything from me beyond polite neighborliness. You're always so quiet, so contained. I could never read you. I asked you for coffee twice, and you had excuses both times. I thought maybe you were just being nice when you talked to me, that maybe I was projecting my own feelings onto someone who was just being friendly. You have feelings? The words came out embarrassingly breathless. I've had feelings since the day I helped you carry your groceries up, and you laughed at my terrible joke about the produce section, Owen said, and his smile was soft and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. I've noticed everything about you too, Nettie. The way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're concentrating, how you always smell like vanilla and something floral, the fact that you draw little designs on your coffee cups when you're thinking. I thought I was going crazy, wanting someone who might not want me back. I turned down coffee because I was terrified, Natalie admitted. Terrified that I'd give away how much I liked you and ruin everything. It felt safer to keep you at a distance and write about you instead. And what did you write? Owen asked, his voice dropping lower. In these stories where I feel the same way? Natalie felt heat flood her cheeks. I wrote about a man who sees the real person behind the shy exterior, who thinks her quietness is peaceful rather than boring, who makes her feel safe enough to be herself. She paused. I wrote about someone worth taking a risk for. Show me, Owen said. And when she started to pull away, he stopped her. No, I mean it. I want to see how you see me. I want to understand what's been in your heart all this time. With trembling hands, Natalie scrolled to one of her favorite passages, one she'd written late at night when missing him felt like an actual ache. Owen read it slowly, and she watched his expression shift from curiosity to something deeper, warmer.
Oh.
This is beautiful, he said finally. You made me better than I am. Oh, Natalie corrected, finding her courage. I wrote you exactly as you are, kind and funny and patient and real. You're not some fantasy, Owen. You're the reason I couldn't make up a better hero, because reality was already perfect. The laptop was forgotten as Owen's hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up to his. 8 months, he murmured. 8 months we've wasted dancing around this. We're not dancing anymore, Natalie whispered. No, Owen agreed, his lips a breath away from hers. We're not. When he kissed her, it was everything her stories had promised, and nothing like them at all. Because reality had a depth that fiction couldn't capture. There was the slightly scratchy feeling of his 5 o'clock shadow, a taste of tea and something uniquely him, the way his hand cradled the back of her head like she was precious. There was the sound of their breathing mixing with the storm. The feeling of his heart racing under her palm when she pressed it to his chest. They broke apart slowly, foreheads touching, both breathing hard. I can't believe this is real, Natalie said. I'd leave it, Owen replied, kissing her again, softer this time. And Natalie, you should publish these stories. They're good, really good. The writing is incredible, she laughed against his mouth. I'm not publishing romance novels about my actual neighbor. And change the names and the details, he suggested, pulling her closer until she was tucked against his side. But keep the heart of it. Keep the truth about what it feels like to want someone and not know if they want you back. People need stories like that. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, wrapped in Owen's arms with her secrets finally free, Natalie felt peaceful for the first time in 8 months. They talked through the night, sharing all the moments they'd each treasured, laughing at the cross signals and near misses, marveling at the fact that they'd been circling each other for so long. What happens when the storm ends? Natalie asked as dawn started to lighten the sky. It's the worst of the weather finally passing. Owen pressed a kiss to her temple. Then we start our own story, he said. One we write together. Morning light filtered through the windows, soft and clean after the violence of the storm. Natalie woke up on Owen's couch, her head on his chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her. For a moment, she thought she might have dreamed it all, that she'd wake up back in her own apartment with her secret still hidden. But then Owen's fingers traced gentle patterns on her shoulder, and she knew it was beautifully, impossibly real. Good morning, he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. Natalie tilted her head up to look at him, taking in the way morning light turned his hair copper, the soft vulnerability in his eyes. Hi, no regrets. he asked, and she could hear the hint of uncertainty beneath the question. Not even one, she promised, and sealed it with a kiss. They eventually untangled themselves to assess the damage from the storm. Owen made coffee while Natalie checked her phone, wincing at the messages. Her apartment had taken on water, her landlord said, and would need significant repairs before it was livable again. It's like I need to find somewhere to stay for a while, she said. Trying not to sound as anxious as she felt, Owen didn't hesitate. Stay here. Owen, that's too much to ask. I can figure something out. Maybe Sienna has room. He crossed the room and took her hands. I'm not offering out of obligation, Natty. I'm offering because I want you here. We just found each other. Really found each other. I'm not ready to have you across town when you could be right here. The honesty in his voice made her eyes sting with happy tears. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything, he said firmly. Besides, you need to finish that story you were working on. What happens to the marine biologist and the graphic designer who finally stop hiding their feelings? Natalie laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. I guess we'll have to find out together. The next few days were a blur of adjusting to their new reality. Sienna showed up on the third day. Her reaction to finding Natalie in Owen's apartment, exactly what you'd expect from a best friend who'd been hearing about him for months. Wait, Sienna said, pointing between them. You're telling me that the storm forced you two together? You found your secret romance novels about him, and instead of running away screaming, he confessed he'd been into you the whole time? This is literally a plot from one of your stories. No, Natalie said, unable to stop smiling. I couldn't make this up if I tried. And you're staying here now? Sienna asked Owen directly, her protective friend mode fully engaged. She's staying as long as she wants, Owen confirmed, his hand finding Natalie's naturally. Which I'm hoping is permanently, but we're taking things one day at a time. Sienna studied him for a long moment, then grinned. Okay, you're good. You can keep her. But hurt her, and I know 17 different ways to make your life miserable. Marine biology boy. Duly noted, Owen said seriously. But his eyes were laughing after Sienna left with promises to help move Natalie's salvageable belongings. Owen pulled Natalie onto the couch. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did it take a storm to make this happen? If I'd never seen that laptop, would you have ever told me? Natalie thought about it honestly. I don't know. Maybe eventually. Maybe I would have gotten brave enough. But probably I would have just kept writing about it, living in a safe fantasy instead of risking the real thing. What changed? Owen asked. You did, she said simply. The way you reacted when you found out. You didn't make me feel creepy or weird. You made me feel seen. You treated my feelings like they mattered, like they were worth something. That gave me courage I didn't know I had. Owen pulled her closer. Your feelings matter more than anything. And for what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. It takes guts to write down what you want, even if you've never planned to show anyone. You were honest with yourself, and that's harder than most people ever manage. Over the following weeks, Natalie discovered what it was like to live in the reality she'd only imagined. Owen leaving notes on the coffee maker before his early morning research trips, cooking dinner together while debating whether cilantro tasted like soap, falling asleep tangled together while he read aloud from her latest chapter. It wasn't always perfect. There were awkward moments and adjustments, learning each other's habits and boundaries, but it was real in a way fiction could never be. One evening, as they sat on the couch editing Natalie's manuscript, Owen suddenly laughed. You know what's funny? I spent 8 months trying to work up the nerve to ask you on a proper date. I had this whole plan. There's this amazing aquarium in Tacoma, and they have a behind-the-scenes tour I thought you'd love. I'd chickened out a dozen times. Could still go, Natalie suggested. I'd love to see where you work, what you're passionate about. Yeah. Owen's face lit up in that way that made her heart skip. I want to know everything about you. The real you, not the version I imagined. The real me snores sometimes, Owen warned. And I'm terrible at remembering to replace the toilet paper roll. And I get weirdly competitive about board games. The real me talks to herself when she writes, Natalie countered. And I'm obsessive about organizing my pens by color. And I cry at basically every movie. even the ones that aren't sad. Perfect, Owen declared, kissing her soundly. Absolutely perfect. 2 months later, Natalie finished her novel. She'd changed the names, altered the details, but kept the heart of it. Two people too afraid to risk rejection, circling each other until fate forced them together. She'd written about the courage it takes to be vulnerable, about how sometimes the best love stories are the ones we're afraid to live. She sent it to literary agents, not really expecting anything. But 3 weeks later, she got an email that made her scream loud enough that Owen came running from the shower, still dripping wet and panicked. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "Someone wants to represent my book," she shouted, laughing and crying at the same time. "A real agent wants to help me publish it." Owen picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing, water from his hair dripping on them both. "I told you it was good. I told you people needed this story. It's our story," Natalie said, cupping his face in her hands. "It's the story of what happens when you stop hiding and start hoping. When you risk your heart for something real." "Best story ever told," Owen agreed, and kissed her like he'd been doing for months now, like he planned to keep doing for years to come. That night, as they celebrated with takeout and cheap wine, Natalie thought about how strange life could be, how a storm could bring clarity, how secrets could become bridges, how the thing you're most afraid to reveal can become the thing that sets you free. She'd spent 8 months writing about love because she was too scared to live it. But in the end, reality had surpassed every word she'd written. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, catching her staring at him with that soft look he'd come to recognize. "Just that I was writing the wrong story all along," Natalie said. "I kept trying to imagine how we'd get together, all these elaborate scenarios. But the real story was better. It was about two people brave enough to be honest when it mattered most." "You think our story's over?" Owen challenged, that playful glint in his eye. "No," Natalie said, moving into his arms where she'd learned she belonged. "I think it's just beginning, and I can't wait to see what happens next." Outside the window, Seattle's moody sky promised rain again, but neither of them worried about storms anymore. They'd learned that sometimes the tempest doesn't destroy, it reveals. It shows you what matters, what's worth fighting for, what's been there all along waiting for you to be brave enough to reach for it, and somewhere in the future that they'd write together. One day at a time, there would be more stories. Maybe about a marine biologist and a graphic designer turned novelist. Maybe about their adventures, their challenges, their small victories and quiet joys. But whatever stories came next, they'd live them together. No longer hiding behind pages, but creating a narrative worth reading, worth living. Worth every risk they'd taken to get here. Because the best love stories aren't the ones we write. They're the ones we live, and theirs was just getting started.